Hi friends, I'm Meg Tucker from Cook with Meg, and today we are in the kitchen and I'm going to show you how to make homemade pickles. I like to call them Quickles because they come together super fast with literally 7 ingredients. 6 of them you probably already have in your cupboard or your pantry. All right, so let's get started. You need obviously cucumbers to make pickles, and I've got, they're pretty small, so I've got 5 little baby cukes. I have a cutting board and I have a knife and I've got clean hands. And I also wanna make sure that my hands, we have dry hands. When you are handling vegetables that you wash, you wanna make sure your hands are nice and clean, and that's so that we don't have any slipping when we handle a knife. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to take our pickles or cucumbers. We're going to take a small to medium sized bowl. This is just a small batch of Quickles, and we are going to chop them or slice them depending on the thickness that you prefer. So I have first cut the ends off the cucumber, and then I'm going to just give them a little slice. I'm going to show you here. It actually sticks right to my knife. We're using about just a nice thin slice. I would say that would be about a 1/4 inch, but again, completely up to you. If you like your pickles to be a little chunkier, you can absolutely make them a little bit thicker. If you like them to be thinner, you can make them thin. And if you want them to be strips, you can cut them into strips. So what we're going to do, oh, I didn't tell you this, but this is my recipe. Always have your recipe handy, whether it's printed or whether it's on a tablet beside you. And it's really important that you keep a recipe nearby. We're just gonna throw those into the bowl as we chop. Now I'm gonna do 2 at a time. Why not? It's important that we keep our recipe beside us, and it's important when you're following a recipe that you take a minute before you begin and you read through the recipe. We want to make sure that the recipe makes sense to us. We want to gather our ingredients and make sure that we've got them on hand. And if you are a family that wants to make a few modifications, i.e. leaving something out or adding a different spice or adding a different item, you will have read the recipe. So it's a good habit to get into. Now, be careful when you're pushing cucumbers or anything off your knife. This is a sharp blade. We want to always be nice and safe. The other thing that we always try to do is remain consistent in size. So I made my decision to make them all about a 1/4 inch in thickness. You ultimately want to make all of your pickles that size. That's not because we're being picky for pickles. It's because we want the liquid that we are going to cook to permeate and make its way through the cucumbers at the same rate and at the same speed. Because these are called Quickles, we're not canning these, we're not bottling these and processing them in boiling water and waiting for the lids in the jars to pop. We are actually just going to place them into the fridge for a few hours until it's time to enjoy them. So we want to make sure that those slices are all relatively the same thickness so that the liquid makes them all the same amount of pickliness. Is that a word? I think I just made it up. All right, so if you're not comfortable slicing 2 at a time, you can work on 1 at a time. Again, did you see what I just did? When I got to the last slice, we were down to just a teeny tiny nugget of cucumber, and I want to keep those fingers safe. So you can actually, instead of keeping your other hand, this is called your guide hand, instead of keeping those fingers tucked under, you can place them on top of the knife, and then that gives you a little more stability. So with that said, we've got our cucumbers sliced. You can put this into compost. I just put it down into the sink for now. We'll deal with it after. We are finished with the cutting board and we are finished with the knife, but I'm putting the knife away, just away from the sink. We never, ever want to place a knife down into the sink. You want to be super careful at all times. Okay, so look at my cucumbers. They're gorge. They're so cute. It's a small batch. You see I've got a little jar here, a nice tiny small jar. You can do two things at this point. You can either leave them in the bowl and pour your pickling liquid right over this and place this into the fridge. Or if you have a little jar, you can certainly pack all your cucumbers into a jar, pour your liquid on top, put the lid on when it comes to room temperature, and pop them into the fridge. Completely up to you. For today, I will leave mine in the bowl. It's easy, it's simple. The cucumbers, taste test, they're just cucumbers. They haven't gone to pickling school yet, but they're delicious. All right, so looking on the recipe, we have a few things that we need to heat up on the stove, but there is one item which is dill. That's dried dill. You can use fresh dill as well. We're going to take the cucumbers and we're going to shake a little bit of the dill over the cucumbers right now. And I've got a little spatula here that I'm just going to give them a little bit of a stir. I want to add dill to make these sort of sweet and sour dilly pickle. I actually don't have garlic in this recipe today, but if you love garlic, you can absolutely add some garlic. And see, all we've done is we've just put about a teaspoon of dill, dried dill, over the cucumbers just to give them a little coating, if you will. And we're gonna set them aside, and I've got all my pickling liquid here. Oh, let's get the burner. Let's bring that burner, ta-da, in front. And when we come back, we are going to get our pickling liquid heated, and then we're gonna pour it over the cucumbers, and ta-da, we will have pickles. Quickles. Meet you back here in 1 sec. And we're back. Now we are ready to make our pickling liquid for these beautiful little cucumbers. Oh, by the way, should mention that I use little mini cucumbers. You can also use an English, like a long, bigger English cucumber. Whatever cucumbers you have on hand, they work. And this actually works with not just cucumbers. You can pickle carrots, you can pickle beans, you can quick pickle anything. We are going to now make the liquid. So what I am adding to a small to medium saucepan is 1/2 cup of water. Woo, that's the vinegar, 1/2 cup of regular white vinegar. You can use any kind of vinegar that you have on hand. Mustard seed. Mustard seed is really great. We're gonna add about a teaspoon of mustard seed. And, oh, there's a little seed here that's a little bit bigger that didn't quite get crushed. We're gonna pull that guy out. And then we're going to put about 3 tablespoons of just granulated sugar. I find when you go to make pickles, excuse me, you definitely need to balance that very, very briny vinegar. Sour, sour, sour. You need to balance it with water, and you need to balance it with sugar. So I like my pickle a little bit sweet and sour, which is why I like to add the 3 tablespoons of sugar. You can add less, you can add more. Start with this, see what you think of the liquid. We've got the heat now on medium high. We're actually gonna turn it kind of way up. And it's not very much liquid, but we want to bring that to a boil. So I'm going to bring, once again, I'm going to bring my camera closer so you can see this bubbling. It won't take very long. It's only about this much liquid, but the next shot you're going to see will be looking down into the pot so you can see what we're looking for here. Be back in a sec. All right, so here we have our pickling liquid. You don't really need to stir it, but I'm just moving around the little mustard seed so you can see. It is pretty clear now because that granulated sugar melted very quickly. And I can start to see on the bottom, because this is a white pan on the inside, I can start to see little bubbles forming. So what we're looking for here is for this to come from cold to room temperature to a simmer. And you can start to see the little bubbles are forming down on the bottom of the pot. We're also starting to see a little bit of steam forming around the inside of the pot. That steam is indicative that it's starting to come to a simmer. And when you start seeing little quick swampy bubbles form, that would be considered a simmer. Let's go even closer. That's a simmer. The simmer is quickly going to turn into a boil. And what we want to do is we really just want to boil it for about 30 seconds. We don't need this to be screeching hot, somewhere between a simmer and a boil, but we want to dissolve all of that sugar. And I will give you a little word of warning. Don't put your face right over it because that will be a vinegar facial. That is very, very, very strong. So what we're doing is we're also helping to break up a little bit of that mustard seed and bring the flavor out. I would say we're good to turn that burner right off. You can see those bubbles have started to really pop. We don't need it any hotter than that. So let's come back and let's get that liquid poured over our cucumbers. And we're back. So here we have that beautiful pickling liquid. It's vinegar, water, sugar, mustard seed. If you wanted to add a little bit of garlic or garlic powder, put it into the vinegar. And we're gonna pour that liquid right over our cucumbers. And the really cool thing about this, actually hot thing, is that that is just enough liquid to cover the beautiful little cucumber pieces. So they are absolutely still cucumbers. We have not gone to Pickleville yet, but you can see that the level of liquid comes up right to the top. If you find that you maybe used too many cucumbers, I mean, there's never such a thing, but you might want to make up an extra batch of the liquid. You definitely want those cucumbers to be sitting in the liquid or partially to fully covered. I like using a bowl like this because it's not a very big size bowl. That would be considered, I guess, a small bowl. And what it's going to allow me to do is really just sort of take a fork and press down, get the mustard seed, get the vinegar, get all of the liquid together. Now I want to go in for a taste. Obviously, we are not anywhere near Pickleville yet, and it's warm, it's hot, but those cold cucumbers probably cooled it down a little bit. Those are good. Those are really good. Rinse your fork if you're gonna go in for another taste. Whoa, they're very pickly. They're very vinegar heavy. Really important to balance your vinegar with the water. So we wanna do equal parts. And 3 tablespoons of sugar are in this jar. I might have even gone a little more sugar. And what you can actually do is when you're making your pickling liquid, before you go to pour it, you can dip a little spoon in. It's going to be extremely hot and it's very potent, but give it a little taste. If you feel you want to adjust it and add a little more sugar, that's the perfect opportunity because you're able to add the sugar while it still has a chance to melt again. But the other cool thing about these pickles, I did wash my fork, is that we're gonna let them soak. We're gonna let those hang out in the fridge. The longer they can hang in the fridge, the better. So let's say you want pickles for tonight, for supper, make them in the morning. They will last a couple of days in the fridge. I would not leave them more than 3 days. The vinegar does help to preserve them a little bit, but that's it. We really don't have anything in here to keep them much longer than that. So eat them on burgers, eat them on sandwiches, chop them up and put them into tuna salad, eat them on their own. They are quick pickles. Let's rinse the fork one more time. They've literally been in there for maybe a minute, but I'm gonna take one more little taste. They're so good. They're so good. And they've only been in there a minute. Imagine how these will taste after a few hours. So there you have it, a quick Quickle homemade pickle. Hope you enjoy it. Let's do our dishes. Let's clean that kitchen back up and put everything away the way we found it. For more Cook with Meg, head to cookwithmeg.com and I will see you in the kitchen next time. Happy pickling.